Let me just let me also show you. This is from your book. Rather than focusing on economic malfeasance, an ascendant professional managerial class elite under Obama pursued sexual crimes. So this is what Barack Obama, instead of going after the economic crimes that had just crashed our economy, which was started by Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, let's remember, he destroyed welfare while he exploded the prison population, gave us 100,000 more cops. He consolidated the media from 50 giant media companies down to 6, and he deregulated Wall Street, which would come over to screw the working class within a decade. That's what the liberal lefty Bill Clinton did. That's why this idea that the Democrats are left is garbage. They're not left. The Democrats are a right wing or a conservative party that serves the elite moneyed interests. So you say, rather than focusing on economic malfeasance, an ascendant professional managerial class elite under Obama pursued sexual crimes, not at work or in the workplace, but on college campuses. This is what you're talking about with Title IX. With the zeal that liberals reserve for any policy that diverts attention away from economic redistribution. In short, rather than break up the banks or reform the financial sector after he took office, Barack Obama wanted to use his electoral victory to eliminate sexual violence on college campuses. He wrote a letter to campuses called, it was a Dear Something letter.
It was called a Dear Colleague letter that came out of his Title IX office.
I remember that.
Yeah, so you go, let me just go on to quote you again. You say the Obama administration's zealous enforcement of Title IX is very different from the way in which Hank Paulson and Timothy Geithner engineered the bailout of criminal financial institutions after the financial meltdown in 2008. Why did an Obama administration send a Dear Colleague letter to the investment bankers and financial advisors, warning them about helping their clients evade billions of dollars in taxes that used correctly could be reinvested in public universities and public education programs? What about a Dear Colleague letter addressing to Big Pharma, warning it about federal regulations coming down the pipeline about opioid dumping in rural areas? What about a Dear Colleague letter addressed to Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs, AIG, JP Morgan, Chase, Bank of America, or any other institution that insures, sold, and packaged bagged mortgages to the detriment of borrowers and investment? What about a Dear Colleague letter to the fossil fuel companies, warning them about their cover-up, about their knowledge of carbon production and climate change? In the absence of such letters, we have to conclude that the professional managerial class elites prefer fomenting moral panics to implementing even the most modest redistributive or progressive economic policies, even after a global financial catastrophe. In the absence of such letters, we have to conclude that the professional managerial class elites prefer fomenting moral panics to implementing even the most modest redistributive, or I just said it twice, but it's so good I had to say it twice. So let me bring you back in and that. So that's what I've been screaming about at this show since we started this show, is that they focus on these kind of virtue signaling, identity politics, talking about sexual violence on campus and all this shit, and instead of focusing on the thing that would actually help everybody, which is an economic war against the establishment. Go ahead.
So one of the things that made that Dear Colleague letter so effective was that it went out to every college that was receiving federal funding, which means like from the National Science Foundation, from the National Institute of Health, the science and medicine departments would be cut off if the Obama administration found that people were not implementing Title IX. So I've been in universities my whole life. I've seen a lot of sexism. I've received hate mail. I've been stalked. There's all this. There is a lot of sexism and misogyny in the academy. Also, as an undergraduate, you're out here, you're vulnerable, you're a young woman. Yes, universities should be protecting women more, or actually just putting into place like controls about certain kinds of behavior that are unacceptable. But Obama's Dear Colleague letter to the campuses was basically a threat. It's like, if you're not enforcing Title IX, you are going to lose your college funding. So what it led to was this like really intense prosecution and focus about sexual violence on campuses. And there was a documentary by Kirby Dick called The Hunting Ground. It made college campuses sound like they were just like terrifying places for young women. Well, you know what? You know what's a terrifying place for a young woman? Like working in a really horrible job and having a really, really horrible boss. And when you're on a college campus, you might be fucked up in many, many ways. You're young, you're vulnerable, but you're actually not working a horrible job where your livelihood is at stake. I don't want to minimize what women have gone through on campuses. I understand, and I've been through a lot of this stuff, but the thing about having these offices then spend a lot of energy and time doing these kinds of investigations that often, I talk about it in the book, led to wrongful prosecution and a general kind of terror on the part of men and women, because basically if you have a Title IX complaint and you don't feel like you're enforcing it properly, the federal government the Obama administration was going to be like, you know what? You're going to lose your funding. And so my son was about to go into college around that same time. And I'd seen a lot of these cases come through where some things were, prosecuted correctly, but there were many cases where young women accused young men of doing stuff that then destroyed the young men's lives, destroyed the young women's lives as well. And I said to my son at the time, when he was graduating from high school, I was like, do not be alone with a girl who's drunk. Do not be alone with a girl who's drunk, because you don't know what's going to happen. And there is among young women a practice of, this expectation then put on this in this way that it's infantilizing. It's like it's saying that young women can't protect themselves.
Yes.
It's actually not empowering. And if I were a mother, I would say to my daughter too, like, learn how to protect yourself. Don't be drunk with someone who you don't know, right? But it's this whole thing about like, and this is where I sound somewhat libertarian American too. It's like actually understanding what your power is, what's happening, being aware of what's going on, because right now the atmosphere has gone to under Obama has gotten to a point where sex is seen as extraordinarily dangerous on college campuses.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Because there's always this question of an ambiguity around consent. And then we're like turning our head going, oh, young people aren't getting married. No one's having sex. Everyone's just watching porn. Well, it's this kind of overregulation of sexual life, underregulation of economic life.
That's right.
That is like this weird paradox that we're living in right now. Like basically you know what's happening right now? The big hedge funds and private equity are buying up office space in malls and putting in urgent care. Our health system is collapsing, but private equity is learning how to profit from it, because they have these urgent care offices where they will take your insurance or they'll take Medicare because doctors' offices and hospitals are overwhelmed, they've been cut. So it's totally unregulated. These like weird, you'll see them. They have these like little Red Cross signs everywhere. They're in malls. Suddenly they're popping up everywhere. Let them do whatever they want, right? With private equity. But with young people on college campuses, let's like really surveil them and discipline them and make them believe that sex is a really, really scary thing. So and make this kind of make it legalistic, make it highly surveilled, and make that the banner under which we're going to go get social progress.
Okay.
In the meantime, people are the greatest causes of bankruptcy in America, as we know, are medical bills.
That's right.
In the meantime, there are 63,000 people sleeping on the streets of Los Angeles. I don't know what the numbers are in San Francisco, but let's not build any social housing. Let's just police people on the level of sex and their language.
Okay.
So I'm like, how is this leading us to a better world? How is this making us feel like we're participating in something that we can be proud of in terms of a future for the United States? How does it actually let the bad guys go? Like basically, and how does it make us, how is there no justice for people who have raped and pillaged us economically?
Go ahead, Kurt.
I don't know, that whole thing, I was so disappointed with Obama because I was kind of a believer. I was like, oh my God, look how Bush has led us into this economic disaster. There's going to be justice. Like people are going to be called to the table. Nobody was called to the table.
Nobody.
Nobody served time. There's this documentary that talks about this little Chinese bank in Chinatown, New York, that they fudged mortgage applications for Chinese immigrants, right? They were the only people indicted for financial malfeasance after 2008.
That's true. That's true. I remember I saw that documentary. Kurt, you want to say?
Yeah. So back when that Title IX thing, I remember when that happened, because that was right. So the Mattress Girl was the big one.
So
yes,
she ended up being a Republican, friend of Robbie Swove now. She went back on that. But during that time when they were hyping this up, and you know, just now I started reading all that John Taylor Gatto stuff about how our educational system is set up. And it's set up to create this PMC class, or as I guess the Chinese call it, Baizu or something, the leftist kind of like managerial. So they're being trained. Yeah, they're being trained to control the lower class. I mean, this is by design. It was written by the people who invented our education system for compulsory education, and they wanted people that were. If you're poor, they want you obedient and a worker, and they want you relatively uniform for marketing purposes. They want to extend childhood. This is something way back then they put in. They want to extend childhood. So there's the thing of I'm helpless that they're putting on the campuses. Then when Obama sucked up to this, because he was like a Neil deGrasse Tyson popular with your white liberal feminist types. Yes. And so those kangaroo courts they set up in the college, not only do they make the college not responsible for all the stuff happening on their, all the drinking on campus that leads to this, they get to have not legal, but just a kangaroo court. That's basically like what Julian Assange would be in, where you're not allowed to defend yourself, and then they throw them out of college. That's the only punishment. I guess they're kicked out of the managerial class is the punishment.
Yeah.
And so that was a big gimme. So now the reason this stuff is getting so crazy is because it's creating the markets of tomorrow. So such as the trans identity. Those are pharmaceutical markets of tomorrow. These are people that are going to need drugs for years and years. So we're training you now for the products that you're going to be buying and manufacturing tomorrow. And that's what they mean by information management. But all this is a real capitalist place. None of it is leftist really at all.